I need to preface this by saying I am not normally a petty person. I'm 34, I work from home, and my garden is genuinely the thing I care most about outside of my family. I've been growing dahlias, tomatoes, and a small pollinator section for 3 years. It's not huge, but it's mine, and I put real time into it. We live in a neighborhood with a shared walking path that runs along the back edge of everyone's property. It's a nice setup. Neighbors walk their dogs, kids ride bikes, whatever. I've always been fine with it. The path itself is public. The 2 feet between my garden border and the path, however, is my yard. About 6 weeks ago, a woman moved into the rental 4 houses down. I'll call her Brenda because honestly she has massive Brenda energy. She has a son, maybe 5 or 6 years old, named, I am not making this up, Kaiser. Like Kaiser but with a Y. I want to be clear that I have nothing against kids. I genuinely don't. But Kaiser had a habit of running off the path and stomping through people's yards, pulling at plants, kicking dirt, the whole thing. Normal kid chaos, right? Fine. Except Brenda would just watch it happen and smile like he was performing a ballet. The first time it happened to my garden, Kaiser ripped 2 of my dahlia stems clean off. I was sitting on my back porch, maybe 30 feet away. I called over nicely. Oh hey, could you keep him out of the garden beds? Those took a while to grow. Brenda looked at me, looked at Kaiser, and said, he's just a little boy. He doesn't know any better. Then she kept walking. I thought, okay, one-time thing. Maybe she'd tell him later. Week 2, Kaiser gets into my pollinator section and pulls out an entire echinacea plant, roots and all, like he was harvesting it. Brenda was literally on her phone 5 feet away. I went over this time and said more firmly, I really need you to watch him around my garden. That plant took 2 years to establish. She looked at me like I'd asked her to pay my mortgage and said, you shouldn't have a garden so close to the path if you don't want it touched. Kids are curious. I stared at her for a second and walked back inside. Week 3, she let him throw mulch, like handfuls of it. I watched it happen from my kitchen window. I knocked on the glass. She waved at me. Waved. Like a parade wave. By week 4, I was genuinely furious. Kaiser had gotten into my tomato cages and bent 2 of them out of shape trying to climb them, and one of my better dahlia varieties, a cafe au lait that I'd been babying since March, was snapped in half. Brenda was sitting on a portable chair she'd started bringing. She had made the path her personal lounging spot. I walked over and said, very directly, this is the 4th time your son has damaged my garden. I need you to actually supervise him, or I'm going to have to escalate this. She stood up, and I thought, okay, finally, she's taking this seriously. Nope. She pointed at my garden border and said my decorative fence is a little metal edging, like 8 inches tall, purely decorative, was a hazard for children, and that I should remove it. Then she said, if I threatened her, again, she'd report me to the HOA. I went inside and thought about it for about 45 minutes. Then I got on the HOA portal and looked up the actual rules. Decorative edging is explicitly allowed up to 12 inches. My edging was 8. I was fine. Then I pulled up the county assessor's website and looked at Brenda's rental property. And here's where it got interesting. The rental she's in has a detached structure in the back, sort of a converted shed situation, that the previous tenants had been using as a hangout space. I'd seen lights on in it at night. On the assessor's page, that structure was listed as a storage shed. Not a dwelling, not a permitted living space, just a shed. I'm not saying someone was living in it. I'm saying there were extension cords running to it, curtains in the window, and a space heater visible from the path. I called the city's code enforcement line and described what I observed. I was factual. I didn't editorialize. I just said I'd noticed what appeared to be a non-permitted structure being used as a living space and wanted to make sure it was up to code. I also, while I had my documentation hat on, took photos of every instance of garden damage going back to week 1. I had some from my phone, and my porch camera had caught a few, wrote up a timeline, and submitted it to the HOA as a formal complaint about a neighbor allowing her child to repeatedly damage my private property. Then I put up a real garden fence, 4 feet tall, wooden stakes, the kind that means business, totally within HOA guidelines. I also put up a small, polite sign that said, private garden, please stay on path. Brenda saw the fence going up and came over and actually said, that's so passive-aggressive. I said, it's a fence, and kept digging. Update. Okay, so I posted this originally in a local neighborhood sub, and someone suggested I cross-post here because their update was wild enough to share. 3 days after I called code enforcement, there was a city inspector at the rental property. I didn't see the whole interaction, but my neighbor Greg, 67, retired, knows everything that happens on this street, told me the inspector found that the shed had been wired without a permit and had a portable toilet situation that I don't fully want to think about. He wasn't sure exactly who was in it, whether it was a tenant the landlord had put there or something Brenda had arranged, but the structure had to be vacated and the landlord was cited. The HOA responded to my complaint and sent Brenda a formal letter. I know this because she came to my door, and this is not an exaggeration. She came to my door with Kaiser and made him stand there while she told me I was teaching him that adults are mean and that I had escalated a simple misunderstanding. I said, I asked you 4 times to keep him out of my garden. She said, he's a child. I said, and this is a formal HOA warning, so. And I closed the door. I found out through Greg, truly the neighborhood oracle, that the landlord was furious about the code violation and that Brenda's lease situation was being reviewed, which I assume means she's getting the boot. I feel a little bad about that part, genuinely, because moving is hard, and I don't know her whole situation. But also she watched her son rip a 2-year-old echinacea out of the ground and waved at me like I was the problem. The garden is doing okay. Lost the cafe au lait dahlia for the season, but I've got 2 new tubers I ordered that should come up next year. The fence looks really good, actually. Greg said it looks distinguished, which is the best compliment I've ever received. Brenda has not walked on the path since the HOA letter. Kaiser, I've actually seen out there with what looks like a grandparent or someone else, and he's been totally fine, stays on the path, doesn't touch anything. So maybe it was always a supervision issue and not a kid issue, which I suspected. I don't think I did anything wrong, but I'll be honest, the code enforcement thing has been sitting with me a little. I didn't make anything up. Everything I reported was stuff I could visibly observe from a shared public path, but I also know I probably wouldn't have called if she hadn't threatened me with the HOA first. So I'm not going to pretend it was purely civic-minded of me. So here's my question for you all. Was I wrong to call code enforcement? I reported real observations, not fabricated anything, but I'll admit the timing was retaliatory. Would you have done the same thing, or would you have found a different way to handle this? And more importantly, what would you have done after week 1 that I should have tried before it got this far?